You've been walking through storms thinking you were just surviving, when in truth, every step was part of a silent choreography setting you up for a moment like this. The one who tried to smother your fire has unknowingly set themselves on a collision course with the very energy they feared. They thought they were maneuvering around you with precision, crafting a false reality so convincing it could blur the truth itself. Yet while they obsessed over manipulating whispers and bending perception, you've been building something unshakable in plain sight. Their plots were spun like fragile glass, delicate, elaborate, but destined to shatter the moment light hit them. And now, that moment is here. What they believed was control was nothing more than a countdown to their own undoing, and they never saw that the clock was ticking in your favor all along. Some people mistake silence for surrender and patience for powerlessness, never realizing they're staring at someone the storm cannot drown. They believe that if they could plant enough suspicion in the minds around you, they could lock you inside an invisible prison built from whispers, stolen glances, and carefully placed doubts. They pictured you pacing in uncertainty, replaying their false narratives in your mind until you began to question your own truth. They thought your openness was an unlocked door, your kindness an exploitable crack, and your vision nothing more than fragile daydreams waiting to collapse. In their plan, the weight of isolation would press so heavily on your shoulders that you would step away from the very path you were born to walk. You're not here by chance. Feel the pull? Tap Join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership, it's your calling. But what they couldn't comprehend was the depth of your anchoring, the unseen reinforcement that no lie can penetrate. They underestimated the quiet strength that comes from standing in alignment with something greater than manipulation. Every attempt they made to diminish you has instead amplified the brilliance they wanted to erase. And now, the currents they once steered against you have shifted, carrying their own deception straight back into their hands. The stage they built to showcase your downfall has become the platform from which your resilience will be remembered, and their intentions will be revealed for all to see. Some people build their lives around illusions, never realizing that the stage they're performing on is made of paper, ready to dissolve the moment truth touches it. The architect of this long-running smear has reached that moment. The false portraits they painted are losing their color, and the audience they once swayed is now noticing the inconsistencies bleeding through the canvas. The tone that once commanded attention now trembles with strain. The confidence they paraded as certainty has fractured, revealing the raw panic underneath. And in a twist they never foresaw, some of the very listeners they thought were loyal are the ones gathering the threads of evidence that will unravel their entire act. They moved through conversations like a puppeteer, tugging at strings they thought no one else could see. They believed they were setting the rhythm, dictating the direction of perception, and quietly steering your story toward ruin. But what they didn't understand was that every movement leaves a trace, and every attempt to manipulate leaves a fingerprint. Those traces have been collected by unexpected hands, people they considered allies but who were quietly documenting every contradiction, every carefully rehearsed deception. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. For too long, they have operated from the delusion that their grip on perception was unbreakable. They pictured themselves as the gatekeeper of your destiny, able to block your ascent with nothing more than words and whispers. They positioned themselves in the shadows, planting doubts where your name was mentioned, assuming no one would bother to examine the roots of those doubts. But the tide has shifted. Truth has a way of breaking through, and it does so with a force that leaves no room for denial. Now, the structures they leaned on for security are folding in on themselves. Those who once repeated their words are comparing details and finding mismatches so glaring they can't be ignored. Their once private influence campaigns are now public puzzles, with people piecing together the scale of their plotting. The more they scramble to hold the pieces together, the faster those pieces slip from their grasp. Even the tools they use to monitor you are turning into evidence. Their obsessive watch over your life, tracking your activities, noting your connections, dissecting your decisions, has become proof of an unhealthy fixation. The archives they built to harm you are becoming the very records that reveal the depth of their intrusion. Every captured detail, once a weapon in their hands, is now a testament to the desperation driving them. This downfall is not the product of revenge, but the natural collapse of something that was never rooted in truth. Lies demand constant maintenance, and they have run out of strength to keep repairing the cracks. The energy they invested in shaping a false version of you has circled back, shaping their own downfall with even greater precision. The ground beneath them is shifting, and they have no foundation left to cling to. They are beginning to see that control was never truly theirs. The influence they thought they commanded was merely borrowed time, and the approval they relied on was conditional, ready to evaporate once the truth emerged. The spotlight they used to blind others is now illuminating their own actions, and there is no place left to hide. If you've been touched by God's goodness, don't keep it to yourself. Click Super Thank You, and sow a gift of $20 or more to help spread His light. Your giving becomes a ripple of grace, blessing hearts and building His kingdom. Let His overflow pour through you. The people they once counted as unquestioning supporters have turned into witnesses. Those witnesses are no longer just listening. They are speaking. Every testimony chips away at the facade until there's nothing left but the raw reality of what they've done. And that reality is louder, clearer, and more undeniable than anything they could fabricate. Their era of hidden sabotage is ending, not with a quiet retreat, but with the unmistakable sound of exposure. What they built to harm you has reversed course, carrying every piece of their deception back into their own hands. The unmasking is not coming. It is already here, and there's no rewinding it. Some people will reach into the most sacred corners of your life, hoping that by stirring the dust in your closest bonds, they can cloud your vision. They didn't limit their games to strangers. They carefully infiltrated the hearts of those who should have been your strongest defenders. They examined the fragile threads in your personal connections, prodding at past disagreements, and planting seeds designed to sprout into mistrust. They specifically sought to unsettle the protective and active forces in your life, knowing that weakening that energy could slow your rise. By designing tailored accusations meant to trigger old fears and insecurities, they aimed to make your presence seem threatening rather than empowering. Their plan involved building a circle of willing hands to help carry out the sabotage. But desperation makes for unsteady alliances, and the very network they gathered has begun to splinter. The ones who once nodded along are now stepping away, unwilling to drown with the ship. Some even claim they, too, were manipulated into joining the plot, casting themselves as unwilling participants who are now eager to distance from the wreckage. What was once a united front of malice is now a scattering of individuals, each trying to save their own name. In this unraveling, the most ironic twist is how their own recruits are now turning the spotlight back on them. People they trusted to help maintain the illusion are providing the very details that puncture it. Those who once stood by their side are walking into conversations armed with proof, screenshots, messages, recollections, that contradict every thread of the falsehoods they spun. The fortress of lies they constructed is falling apart not from outside attack, but from its own collapsing walls. The exposure is happening in real time. As each story is revisited and compared, the contradictions glare like warning beacons. People are noticing that the tales shared with one person don't match the ones told to another. The patchwork of fabrications can't hold under this level of scrutiny. And in an unexpected betrayal, someone inside their most trusted circle has revealed more than they ever imagined possible. Every false investment, whether time, influence, or emotion, has dissolved into nothing. What they poured into this mission against you came at a steep personal cost. They diverted their own opportunities, drained their own resources, and neglected their own growth, all in service of obstructing yours. In trying to halt your momentum, they sacrificed their own, leaving them stranded while you continued to ascend. What they thought was the ultimate checkmate has turned into a spectacular self-sabotage, stripping them of both influence and credibility. The realization hitting them hardest is not merely that they have been exposed, it's that they were never truly in control. All along, while they were convinced they were dismantling your path, you were sharpening your focus, aligning more deeply with your purpose, and attracting even stronger allies. Their efforts to diminish your presence only intensified your magnetism. The further they pushed, the more unstoppable your trajectory became. Every attack they launched was unknowingly transformed into momentum for your rise. The people they turned away from you were, in truth, those not meant to accompany you forward. What they saw as victories were actually clean breaks from dead weight, making space for genuine support and aligned partnerships. They tried to shrink your light but only removed the shadows that once surrounded it. They are now confronted with a truth far heavier than any consequence they anticipated. They missed their mark entirely. Their campaign didn't fracture your foundation, it solidified it. Every ounce of energy spent trying to bury you became the very soil that nourished your growth. Your resilience has not just survived the storm, it has been refined by it. And now, as the dust settles, they stand in the ruins of their own making. The stage they built for your downfall has become the very platform where your strength is displayed. Their failure is complete, not because you retaliated, but because the truth proved stronger than their illusion. The universe did not merely shield you, it turned their arrows into stepping stones beneath your feet. It's a rare kind of spectacle when the very audience someone handpicked to side with them starts turning their chairs in the opposite direction. The forces they tried to sway are now staring straight through the cracks in their story. Those they aimed to charm with promises are now asking why this person poured so much energy into tearing someone else down. People they counted on to echo their words have started to question why those words were spoken in the first place. Even the ones they thought were the easiest to influence are no longer nodding, they're confronting. That shift has left them scrambling, unable to mask the unease that's written across their every move. The most ironic twist for them is that their entire world became wrapped around your existence. While you built, they dismantled. While you created, they destroyed. Your focus stayed forward, theirs stayed fixed on you. They neglected their own path so thoroughly that their identity became little more than a reaction to yours. Every post you made, every step you took, every milestone you reached became a subject for their quiet obsessions. They've collected your life in fragments, not to honor you, but to hunt for flaws they could twist. That fixation has stripped them of balance, joy, and authenticity. This level of preoccupation reveals more than just malice. It exposes an inner void they've been trying to fill with your downfall. Healthy minds don't commit entire seasons of their life to dismantling someone else's name. Healthy hearts don't abandon their own growth to chase another's destruction. But they have done exactly that, locking themselves in a mental cell where every wall bears your shadow. Now, that cell is caving in, and they have nowhere to run. Desperation has a smell, and theirs is thick in the air. Each failed attempt to regain control pushes them into even more reckless territory. They've begun repeating stories everyone already knows are fabricated, thinking volume will hide the emptiness of their claims. They're tossing out accusations that point back to themselves, revealing the very tactics they're trying to disguise. The more they speak, the clearer their role becomes. They're extending their reach, hoping to rally anyone who will give them an ear, but the ground has shifted under them. Their name has traveled ahead of them, carrying with it the warning that they cannot be trusted. New conversations start with skepticism, not sympathy. Potential allies hear them out only to quietly file away what they say as further proof of the patterns others have already shared. The silver-coated words they once relied on now sound like rusted metal scraping against stone. The easy charm that once worked as a key to open doors now clangs against the locks. Their audience is shrinking, their influence evaporating, and every attempt to explain away their actions only cements the perception of deceit. Even those who once stood firmly in their corner are quietly taking steps back. Some are protecting their own reputations, others are simply tired of being pulled into a drama that never ends. With each person who leaves, the isolation deepens, making it harder for them to pretend the collapse isn't happening. They can feel the weight of their own choices pressing in. They once believed they could write the ending to your story, but the script has been ripped from their hands. The reality playing out is one they never rehearsed. A version where they are the subject of whispers, the center of suspicion, the one everyone watches fall apart. This was never the role they imagined for themselves, yet it's the only one left for them now. And so, the unraveling continues in full view, leaving them exposed not just for what they've done, but for what they've become. Their reach has shrunk, their voice carries no conviction, and their legacy, if it can be called that, is a testament to how obsession erodes everything it touches. Meanwhile, your path remains untouched, and every step forward widens the distance between you. Some people spend so long bending reality that their own body begins to revolt against them. The tension of living behind a mask doesn't just drain the mind, it seeps into the bones, the breath, the heartbeat. The one who plotted so relentlessly against you is now wearing the weight of their own deceit like an unshakable illness. The strain is spilling into every corner of their life. Even the roof over their head feels less certain as those closest to them step away, unwilling to share space with the chaos they've created. What once felt stable is trembling, not because anyone pushed it, but because lies make a foundation too brittle to hold. In their attempt to twist the truth about you, they've etched a confession into their own reflection. Every accusation they threw has circled back like an echo, exposing the source for what it is. Every word they used to paint you as dangerous now hangs over them, undeniable and sharp. They set out to dim your presence, but in the glare of reality, their own image has fractured beyond repair. While they spiraled in bitterness, you planted in fertile ground. While they clung to shadows, you stepped fully into illumination. The contrast between where you stand and where they've sunk can no longer be hidden. This trial has honed a new edge in you, a clarity that can't be taught in comfort. You've learned to detect the undercurrent beneath polite words, to see the subtle shifts in energy when intentions aren't pure. You've come to trust the quiet voice inside even when the surface story doesn't align. That skill is now one of your greatest strengths, one that will safeguard your path from similar storms. The very snare they built for you has become the chain tightening around their own feet. The negativity they surrounded you with has turned into the atmosphere they now breathe. The isolation they hoped would suffocate you is the silence enclosing them instead. The shadows they wished to keep you in have stretched over their own world. This isn't just consequence, it's the perfect symmetry of cause meeting effect, a truth so precise it feels almost surgical. Yet, this story is not merely about collapse, it is also about emergence. Every arrow they aimed has been transformed into raw material for your ascent. Every smear has been polished into proof of your resilience. What they thought would weaken you has only deepened your roots and widened your reach. Their efforts to hold you back have cleared the path ahead of you. Those who matter most have begun to see you without the fog of their lies. Connections that once wavered are now steady, drawn back by the strength you've shown. The doors they tried to seal have swung open, revealing opportunities they never wanted you to find. Where they sought to curse your progress, the flow of abundance has only accelerated. In focusing so intently on your downfall, they abandoned their own rise. While you built, they dismantled. While you forged bonds, they broke theirs. They've been left with the hollow echo of a life spent watching yours instead of living their own. And that emptiness is the most haunting consequence of all. What stands now is the undeniable truth that your trajectory was never in their hands. The harder they fought to hold you down, the more force you gathered to rise. The narrative they wanted to control has slipped entirely from their grasp, rewritten by the reality they could not stop. Your story moves forward, not because they fell, but because you kept walking. Their collapse is a shadow in the distance. Your path is lit from within. And as you continue to climb, the gap between your growth and their downfall becomes the clearest testament of all, that no plot can dismantle what was built in truth. There comes a moment when someone who thrived on control is confronted with the undeniable truth that their power was an illusion all along. The architect of this entire campaign is now standing in the wreckage of their own making, unable to salvage the image they fought so hard to maintain. They operated under the belief that persistence in deception could alter reality, that enough repetition could overwrite the truth. But reality does not bend for falsehood, it bends for what is real. The most striking part of this collapse is that it didn't require you to match their aggression. You simply kept moving forward, grounded in your own truth, while the natural order dismantled their schemes piece by piece. The chain of consequences has begun closing around them in ways they never prepared for. people who once echoed their words have gone silent, some even retracting their support entirely. The connections they cultivated through shared animosity toward you are dissolving now that their intentions are exposed. Their reputation, once protected by charm and calculated storytelling, is unraveling under the weight of evidence. Even the alliances they thought were firmly secured are revealing themselves to have been conditional, ready to break the moment the truth emerged. The bitter symmetry of the situation is impossible to ignore. They once set out to discredit your name, and now they are living through the exact reality they tried to impose on you. Except in their case, it's not the work of an enemy, it's the harvest of their own actions. The same accusations they used against you have turned inward, magnified, and multiplied. Where they once claimed loyalty, betrayal now answers them. In their arrogance, they assumed they could rewrite your path as if it were a page in their own story. What they've discovered instead is that some destinies are beyond the reach of human interference. Your journey is shaped by something far larger than their influence, authored by a force that cannot be bribed, silenced, or manipulated. Their attempts to alter the course have only highlighted their own insignificance in the grand design. Now, they are exhausting themselves trying to undo what has already taken root. They move from person to person, attempting to explain away what can no longer be hidden. They scramble to reshape perception while the facts stand in full view. Every denial they utter is met with disbelief, and every attempt at justification only reinforces the very truths they wish to bury. The gift of persuasion they once relied on so heavily has turned brittle and ineffective. What they face is more than just social embarrassment. It's the disintegration of the identity they built. Their sense of power was entirely dependent on being able to influence others, to pull strings unseen. But those strings have snapped, and in the silence that follows, they are left with nothing but the hollow sound of their own desperation. Those who were once persuaded to act against you are waking up to the realization that they were pawns in a much larger game. The ones they manipulated most effectively are now the ones who feel most betrayed. The misplaced anger they once held toward you has found its rightful target, and it burns hotter than anything you could have ignited yourself. The vision they had of themselves, as the one always in control, always several steps ahead, has been shattered. In its place is the sobering awareness that they were merely a player, not the director, of this unfolding story. They did not anticipate that the same moves they made to weaken you would ultimately be the very moves that exposed them. This is the kind of ending they never wrote into their plans. A conclusion where you stand unshaken, moving forward with even greater momentum, and they remain behind, surrounded by the debris of a strategy that failed on every level. Their defeat isn't just visible, it's absolute, and there is no turning it back. There's a point in every battle where momentum shifts so completely that the outcome is no longer in question. That's where you are now. Every barrier they worked so hard to construct has dissolved into nothing. The confusion they fed into your world has evaporated, leaving you with a sharpness of vision that cuts through any remaining shadows. You're not simply moving forward, you're moving with a velocity that their mind can't even process. In trying to bury your progress, they inadvertently nourished it, turning their resistance into the very force that propelled you further. Their reality is now shrinking to two unbearable options: to acknowledge the truth and endure the sting of public exposure, or to cling to the same crumbling lies and face an even harsher collapse. Neither outcome spares them, but one at least allows them to stop digging deeper into the pit they've made. Yet the very pride that fueled their campaign against you is the same thing now holding them captive. Meanwhile, the energy around you is surging. Conversations that once felt stagnant are turning into opportunities. People who matter are finally seeing your true form without distortion. Pathways that once seemed locked are swinging wide open. The abundance you've been steadily building is no longer on the horizon, it's within arm's reach. The backfire of their scheme is so complete that it borders on absurdity. Every attempt they made to block you has ricocheted, isolating them while lifting you higher. They set out to strip you of credibility, but in doing so, they've dismantled their own. They wanted your name tarnished, Yet their own is now the one whispered about with suspicion. They thought they could end your chapter, but instead they've intensified the anticipation for what comes next. What they framed as your weakness has been revealed as the unshakable foundation of your rise.